back to the Nutrimedical Report, and we have Ryan. And, of course, Ryan, it sounds like the 4th of July party's already started at your home.
It has. It's going to be a great weekend full of family and fun and some fireworks.
Oh, yes. So, Ryan, let's start some fireworks off with the nutraceuticals. We get a ton of requests all over the world. Now, we just launched our ability to do in top of the U.S. and Canada, orders 5,300 countries on Earth, where people can do it themselves. They can process the order. We also have a flat rate fee, so people are ordering larger amounts. We're going to save tremendously shipping all over the world. What people should understand is that the nutraceuticals we have in our line are very unique. They don't compare to anything either they're going to find online, like if they go to Vitacost. They're not going to compare to anything they're going to find even at their naturopath's office. They're going to be really unusual. Plus, they're integrated with what I call the very best of medical care and nutraceuticals. And again, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are some very powerful medical investigations. There's very powerful functional medicine. I don't call it alternative medicine either. It's what we call molecular and genetic integrated medicine, or in fact, the medicine of the 21st century is going to use advanced imaging techniques. It's going to use quantitative EEG. It'll be using things like organic acids and gene tests to look at specific gene SNPs, just like genetic-based cancer therapy. And that's what we use in Nutrimedical to customize protocols. We use everything from quantitative resonant magnetic analysis and the bioplasm NLS developed by the Russian Space Agency, detox technologies like infrared sauna, and the very best nutraceuticals to grab those toxins once they're mobilized, like xenoestrogen detox, NutriDefense, Kilormax, BioLVR, and of course our life support, which has the phase 2 detox cofactors. So when your liver grabs the toxins, it can glucuronidate, sulfate, or methylate them so that they are well on their way to being broomed out of the body. And of course, also we have the probiotics, the very best on the planet, with our Roussel 6 strain from Paris, and the most powerful probiotic on Earth ever discovered, called the How Are You strain, which literally is so strong you just give it every third day. So, Ryan, let's talk about your favorites for the 4th of July. What is your favorite nutraceutical today?
Well, I mean, there's so many good ones to choose from. I think that one of the top ones that people should always be considering, and that's Calm Mind. It's one that ranks way up there on my list. It's, no matter what day of the week it is, it seems like there's an overwhelming amount of stress or anxiety that usually overcomes people, and it's not enjoyable. The Calm Mind formulation is a powder that can come in either a neutral flavor, basically you can mix it into anything, or a cherry flavored. Very easy. Just 1 or 2 scoops is usually a good dose, and in 20 minutes you get a significant change. What's going on there? And basically it just helps your neurotransmitters to be functioning better, like serotonin and dopamine, things that are going to calm you down, lower anxiety, the stress levels, and also it deals so well with cravings, which becomes a plaguing problem for people, whether that's drug, alcohol, or things like sugar, carbohydrates.
Yeah, it makes an amazing difference, doesn't it? Now the Calm Mind, basically, the structure is myo-inositol, which is a B vitamin. It alters neurotransmitter levels. It's a postsynaptic inhibitor. It has suntheanine, L-theanine, which is a green tea extract, very safe, very powerful. And it has GABA, the actual gamma-aminobutyric acid. And, of course, we have analogs, some of them toxic, alcohol being one of them. But this is the actual GABA. So it basically calms the nervous system down. It basically does the positive things that would happen. You take something toxic like a beta blocker, which you don't want to take because beta blockers make you fat, bald, and stupid. They also will make you block your calcium ion channels and CoQ10 metabolism. Whereas when you take Calm Mind, it calms your brain down, calms your autonomic nervous system, lowers your blood pressure and your levels of stress hormones. That's important. Now, my other favorites are...
If people are deficient, like you were talking about the myo-inositol, that's a big thing. That there can be a deficiency there that is causing this problem that relies, that has this anxiety and cravings and so forth out of control. And so when you do use Calm Mind, it's helping to nourish and restore levels that really need to be restored. Otherwise, no matter what you take, you kind of, you're never really resolving the issue. So this is a big step towards that.
Yeah, and we're working backwards from the alphabet, and I want to go down to some of our other products like Life Support, Ageless Glycemics. What's in Life Support that's so important for detox? We talked about detox earlier in hour 1. This is an important breakthrough.
Well, one, it's a macro and micronutrient formula. So by that I mean protein, carbs, and fat. So when you're detoxing detoxifying, your body needs a tremendous amount of things like protein, for example. And so this has 26 grams of patented vegan protein per serving. At the same time, it's enhanced with a compound known as aminogen. Aminogen has been shown in clinical studies to enhance the amino acids in the blood, the free amino acids, 2 to 3 times that of taking proteins without aminogen. So it really gives it a kicker to help that in the macronutrient sense. Micronutrient-wise, there are so many unique compounds in this formulation, like ellagic acid, the green tea, the NAC, sodium sulfate. Many of these compounds are basically what they call bifunctional modulators, and they help to support both phase 1 and phase 2 liver detoxification. Another aspect is the other aspect is the anti-inflammatory herbs that are in this formulation. There is over 1,100 milligrams of anti-inflammatory herbs per single serving. So this is a way to calm down the inflammation that's going on systemically in the body at the same time that you're detoxing. And it also contains over 5 grams of glutamine per serving, 3,600 milligrams of branched-chain amino acids for that important muscle-building attribute. It's got...
and it has what's called super carbs. If you're following like we did in the first hour, we talked about... We'd experiment with the vegetarian-vegan diet. What we found is that you got to cut the carbs. You got to cut what we call simple carbohydrates, but you can have super carbs. And in all of our drinks, both ageless, life support, and glycemics especially, we have carbohydrate blocker enzyme. We have we call super carb equivalent, so it basically lowers blood insulin levels tremendously. That's what's really important.
Yeah, these formulations are life support, ageless, glycemic meal. I would usually put these at the top of the list in the sense that people are always wondering, like, what am I going to eat that's healthy? But I'm on the run, I'm on the go. I've got to get off to work. I got to get the kids to school and so forth. And or you come home from work and you're starving and you're about to make a lot of bad decisions that are really going to mess up your body if you do it day after day. So having these shakes available, like glycemic meal, are so important because these small steps, if you can just get your blood sugar regulated out there on a daily basis, you feel so much better, and then you make much more proper food choices. You're not grabbing the chips and the high carbohydrate and sugary snacks. You don't need that stuff.
You can even start off with a small glass, let's say 4 ounces, and then when you have a meal, it's going to block carbohydrates and it's going to slow and keep your insulin levels lower. Sounds like somebody's playing in the pool.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a vacation started up, so I hope you don't mind if you hear some.
No, that's okay. That adds to the atmosphere, the 4th of July atmosphere. I want to start down on some of the other nutraceuticals that are really, really unique that we carry that are going to help people get better, get well. One of them we talked about earlier, and we haven't talked about for a while, is curcumin cream. And curcumin cream is working good for around joints, inflamed skin like psoriasis, rashes, sunburns. It's amazing stuff. It's liposomal, so it's going to be absorbed very, very well. We've got nutraceuticals for the bones, full vitamin K2, which works well with mycel D3 and myco D2 with our bone generator for reversing bone loss. Let's talk about the bones for a minute, because this occurs not just in females. I did a QRMA this morning for a gentleman in his late 60s, and he had pretty significant abnormalities on his QRMA test, indicating that he was developing osteoporosis, osteopenia, and he needed to have his bones rebuilt. So a lot of people think it's just a female disease, not. And what often happens, a male will kind of slip in a pothole playing golf, break a hip, and then they're laid up in bed. It turns out that 50% of the people that have a major fracture, compression fracture of their spine or hip, are dead in 9 months to 12 months. Because their bones got so weak, they ended up in a striker bed in the hospital because even the bones weren't strong enough to support even doing a total hip replacement. That's not good. And there's no need for that happening. We can strengthen your bones at any age. Well, I guess we hit the break, the bumper. So time for one splash in the pool and then back on air. How's that? Back on the air with Ryan. And if you have questions, by the way, it's open lines 800-259-5791. We will take your calls. If our call line is not working, always call our order line and tell us. We will make sure everything's up to snuff. Back in a moment. Welcome back. And interestingly, besides humans, we actually get some friendly animal friends actually that have problems. I did a consult this morning about a gentleman had a pretty big dog, 123 pounds, and had lots of spondylosis of the spine. And, of course, unfortunately, the veterinarian is just like our toxic docs, giving non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. And if you know the biochemistry, It interferes with collagen synthesis, and it destroys the glycosaminoglycans of cartilage. It accelerates calcification of the spine, or accelerates spondylosis. So you want to use things like Inflamex. Inflamex is like the old Wobenzyme N formula, only 10 times stronger, plus serapeptase. That's just one of our amazing formulas.
Yeah, love that one. There's so many people that get jammed up with injuries that, kind of stay stagnant. So they're just like, oh, what's wrong? I just can't quite get the mobility back, or it takes them many weeks for the healing process to really be improved. So what's neat about Inflamex is whether it's an acute issue, where they've even done studies with some of these enzymes that are in there, like the serapeptase, but this is a very powerful, unique, comprehensive blend that is known as basically enteric-coated enzyme formula. So it's not to break down your food, but to get into systemic circulation and really deal with these issues where you're basically having stagnation. You're not able to clear out areas that have been injured or damaged. So from a dental visit to sprained ankles to twisted knees and to other areas that lead to like cardiovascular disease progression and so forth, these enzymes are really critical, and they make a dramatic improvement for people.
We use that in combination with our lumbrokinase and nattokinase first, with Inflamex for actually breaking up plaque. So if your doctor says you got blocked arteries, the first step is not to get chemotherapy-laced stents in your chest or get a bypass. It's to see, can I take enzymes that over 5 or 6 months, if you don't have any acute dangerous problem or cardiac arrhythmia or, dangerous shortness of breath or chest pain, can you clear those arteries? And a lot of people say, well, you can't do that. We do it all the time. We give people Cardivite and enzymes, and over 6 months, their body clears it. So I don't believe this idea you can't clear it. I'm sure that we open and clear things just like we have cancer cells, and we clear them literally daily. I think you get blocked arteries in areas of plaque, and the body just moves in the crew. If it has the right supplements and nutraceuticals or capacity, it'll just clear it out. The next one, I think, I want to talk about some of this for the joints. We've got amazing new formulas now. Joint Performance, Tendon Mender, and Leptin Metabolic. This is a big trio. You want to talk about these specifically because we've had so many people with amazing, like they've had pain for decades, and all of a sudden it's gone in a few days to a week. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tell us about these three, because these are this trio is amazing.
Well, let's first talk about something that's quite unique in the leptin metabolic formulation first. Leptin is a hormone. It's a cytokine that's secreted by our fat cells. It's meant to be a feedback mechanism that tells our brain that we have plenty of stored calories and regulate appetite control. And I know a lot of people are going, oh, I would love something that can help me control what I want to put in my mouth. And when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we often wonder, why are we even hungry in the first place if we're carrying excessive body weight, right? And so this is a breakthrough in helping understand that process. What it's been shown to do in clinical studies is to enhance the sensitivity of leptin, basically, and reduce those levels, which means that your appetite control becomes more significant. Now, what it's also been shown to do in a clinical trial with patients with joint pain, osteoarthritis joint pain, was improve mobility and bring down inflammation at the same time that they got these leptin changes. So it's really working at a core level in the body that is probably leading to a lot of the damage that goes on, not only in the joint tissue, but systemically in our body. So leptin metabolic is a game changer for not only people with joint problems, people but with metabolic problems that sensitivity of leptin will help with.
And there's three classes of people. The first are people that we call obvious diabetics. They look heavy. But then we have people that never get heavy, but they have the same blood vessels as someone diabetic, and they got dyslipidemia. The third class are people with elevated insulin, we call Syndrome X. You can have the range from polycystic ovarian syndrome, with elevated male hormone levels and giant ovaries with cysts. And you can also just get people that have osteoarthritis. It turns out osteo is driven by higher blood insulin levels, and our higher insulin levels are driven by simple carbohydrates. Our culture is drowning in sugar and rapidly absorbed carbos. And the rapidly absorbed carbos drive your tissues to get insulin resistance, primarily in the skeletal muscle first, then the liver second, and the least increase is in the fat cells. So when insulin levels go up, fat cells suck up calories real quick and when they get a certain size, they divide and become more fat cells. So, but in the person that doesn't have that metabolic tendency to get overweight, or become hyperglycemic, turn into diabetic, they actually can have elevated insulin that drives up their cytokines in their joints. And so tell us about that, because this is a big breakthrough. It means they used to not think osteoarthritis or degenerative arthritis was inflammatory, and that's not true. And it's driven by high blood insulin resistance and leptin. which
well,
means if you...
That's a very big point, is the fact that when a lot of people talk about things like osteoarthritis progression, people think it's just kicked off due to an injury that kind of continues to be exacerbated. But what science is saying now is, no, this is a metabolic progression that's going on.
Right.
You know, you may have kicked it off with an acute injury, but more than likely, you had unregulated blood sugar, higher insulin levels, leptin is not managed, and all of a sudden, these inflammatory markers are really cranking up in the joint tissue, leading to a faster breakdown of the tissue itself. And so it was easy to kind of blame a one-time injury or something that you've done to say, oh, I think that was my problem. That is not the main problem that's going on. The body is breaking itself down because it's not regulating these processes of insulin, glucose, leptin. Those are huge areas because they end up triggering inflammatory markers all throughout the tissues. And so this is different. This isn't popping an NSAID to control inflammation because those are very limited, and most of the time they're dangerous in a lot of different ways. This is about going, as you were saying, Dr. Bill, to the root cause of saying, why is the body metabolically off track? And leptin metabolic is about addressing something that is very fundamental and is it's gone wrong in many, many people.
Yeah. In fact, it's a primary cause of degenerative arthritis, which is far more common than inflammatory, like rheumatoid, scleroderma, or mixed connective tissue disease.
Right.
So that's pretty amazing.
Lack of mobility, you brought it up. Yeah. You lose your mobility, man. That's big trouble.
Well, you know. And by the way, it's not just mobility. What happens in your spine is that it encroaches on the spinal or ascending vertebral arteries, and you can end up with cerebral hypoxia because the posterior inferior cerebral arteries to the cerebellum and the brainstem can be affected with decreased circulation because of the posterior limbs of the circle of Willis in the base of the brain. So that's a big deal. And you can do an ultrasound of the skull and actually in the cervical spine and actually see ultrasound deficiencies or kinking or osteophytic encroachment of the of those areas caused by degenerative osteoarthritis. So it's not just like your hips and your knees and other things. It's in areas where he doesn't even allow a surgical response to stop an encroachment on the arteries. So you've got to stop osteoarthritis because ultimately it's going to pinch the arteries in the back of your neck going to your brain. Mm-hmm. Interesting, hey? A lot of people don't know that. Of course, the doctors, unless they specialize in neurology, internal medicine, those areas, they may not know it or pick it up because there's no real easy clinical science to tell you that that's what's happening. Some of the other amazing ones that I'd like to talk about.
Tendon mender. You brought that up, and I want to make sure we talk about tendon mender.
Yeah.
For repetitive motion injuries.
Yes. So, carpal tunnel syndrome, cubital tunnel syndrome in the arm and the elbow, and tarsal tunnel in the foot. By the way, if you get a peroneal nerve entrapment. Back in the moot with Ryan, and we'll continue with the most amazing formulas to help make your 2014 from this day forward much better.
Drop dead.
Yeah, it's a hard symptom to get over, isn't it? Welcome back, and Ryan, I think we have a little bit more information to talk about with regard to our trio, leptin metabolic, tendon mender, and joint performance. Anything more on tendon mender or going on to joint performance?
Let me just, on tendon mender, if I could, real quick. This is a formulation that's changing a lot of lives because people get stuck with these kind of chronic repetitive motion injuries, and then they end up with these, braces on their forearms or a knee, or they're dealing with a lot of stuff with their feet for plantar fasciitis or Achilles tendinopathies, and, they're not enjoying life. Tendon mender sends in a signal basically to the tenocytes, these cells of the tendon. They realign, lay down, they stop this kind of triggering of inflammation, and which limits mobility and also creates more of an inflammatory or pain issue. And it is remarkably effective for a lot of conditions where you're like, I don't even know what to do with that. It's in an area that circulation's not good. It's in an area that's hard to seemingly fix. Rehab doesn't seem to do anything about it. It is a groundbreaker. It is inexpensive and very effective. So keep that one in mind. And then joint performance. Joint performance is different than saying, hey, I want to go use glucosamine and chondroitin specifically to try to kind of bulk up, the joint tissue to hold more fluid and help with your range of motion that way. It's different. It works with a different mechanism that basically stimulates the regrowth of hyaluronic acid. And hyaluronic acid is a backbone upon which glucosamine, chondroitin, and other glucosaminoglycans must rely. So without that backbone, you really can't improve your joint tissue health. And this is a lot like an oil change. So if you're a person that's, say, 20 up to 45 years of age and you go, I don't know what's going on, my joints don't feel that good, I go out and work out or exercise and I don't recover very well, Joint Performance is the one that you really want to start using because it is going to give you a lot more mileage out of the joints that you already have. It's going to control that breakdown of what we call the synovial fluid, the inflammation or effusion that occurs there, and put you back on the right track so that even when you're in the later years of your life, you're going to have much better, healthier joints.
Well, actually, a lot of people, when they start these, have no pain. They've had pain for 10, 20, 30 years. Some of the other ones that are great for the summer, we're trying to trim down. We tell people glycemics, carbo blocker. Sugar is the enemy. Carbo blocker and glycemics. Lipoflush for mobilizing calories. For increasing insulin resistance. Leptin metabolic. We talked about this for arthritis, but it's great for weight loss. It's great for lowering insulin resistance. Lipoflush is conjugated linoleic acid. By the way, CLA is present if you have grass-fed beef. So if you have grass-fed beef, the cheese that the animals make and the meat has fatty acids that are more like salmon, like omega-3 fats, and it also has CLA, conjugated linoleic acid, that mobilizes calories and fat out of fat storage. The leptin metabolic, so it has a wider range of uses. We use it in diabetics, people with weight loss, people with arthritis. And then some of our other newer ones that we haven't talked about for a while, hormone synergy and flash away. A lot of people, both men and women, have hot flashes. This is 8-perennyl nerinogen. For women that are getting male pattern hair baldness, we actually, one of the first things besides recidival hair tonic and collagen max, mountain red velvet, and tendon mender, we recommend they take hormone synergy because it's going to stop the conversion to male hormones that's going to cause male pattern hair baldness. Most women that are going bald, besides the lack of, let's say, digestive enzymes or proteins, which we can correct with gastrozyme and digestes, and collagen max, which is first step in terms of reversing hair, and the recidival, which blocks the male pattern hair follicles, is to block the conversion of female hormone to male. In women, this is really important because of those hair follicles, when they have male pattern hair receptors, it literally takes that genetic tendency toward hair loss that's male and makes women start to lose their hair. So taking hormone synergy for females that are starting to lose their hair, not just hypothyroidism, which is the other thing that's very common. We recommend mitothyroid and adrenal support gland. We may add DHEA and pregnenolone, but the mitothyroid and if easy to test that with a QRMA test. You can also confirm it with tests at functional medicine labs like labtestingdirect.com, and I can help you order the test, which will save you about 70% to order it yourself. Pretty amazing price savings as well, and you just send a report to me, and the consults are all free. You can't beat it. You don't have. People say, "Do you take my insurance?" I said, "It's called zero." He said, "Don't thank me, thank the Most High God, because He told me in 2008 don't charge a king or a pauper a cent for doing consultations." So that's what we do. It's one of our services we provide you when you support us and you support yourself by getting the best nutraceuticals. So, do you want to talk about these or any of the other new amazing formulas that we have present, like for weight loss, diabetoline, biotin plus, leptin metabolic? I tell people insulin levels are way too high in North Americans. That's why 1 in 10 adults now is a diabetic in America. Well, 1 in 10.
I think that even probably a lot of the measurements that people are using as sort of the bell curve or averages for, say, leptin and insulin and so forth. It's we've had a heart problem for a long time because of the diet that we use and have lived on. And so these tools to resensitize the body to the message of insulin are critical. So when you're starting to get things, the symptoms of metabolic syndrome, so you're getting weight gain around the middle, you're getting elevations in blood pressure, elevations in triglycerides, abnormal cholesterol.
Right.
You should be looking at something like diabetoline and as one of the first steps to resensitize to the message of insulin.
And Biotin Plus, and then of course...
Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, and those two, the diabetoline and Biotin Plus, and the leptin metabolic.
And then hemoglobin A1Cs, though, when we see those climbing up, obviously there's something that's, showing some serious damage. You can also consider using something like Nutritrala, which is the number one seller in the NutriMed line. That's the controlled release alpha-lipoic acid product that really shocks almost anyone that's used it. Because alpha-lipoic acid products in the marketplace are vastly disappointing. What you have here is a patented, true, controlled-release formulation that is profound in its ability to basically knock down this kind of inflammatory process that's going on, help resensitize the message. It
reverses glycation. Yeah, help reverse glycation. The other one that's really good for glycation is Vein Away, which is a diosmin. And that actually protects blood vessel walls in the eye, the kidneys, the glomeruli, the small blood vessels, the large arteries. Vein away, very, really important. So those are very, very powerful. You can raise the metabolic rate, too, by taking berberstatin. Berberstatin not only clears the gut out, but we know that all people with chronic gut problems with Candida albicans and with dysbiosis, and all diabetics and people that have weight disorders or hyperinsulinemia, they have a deficiency of a thing called proteolin. Proteolin is the tripeptide that we call it TRH in the brain, called thyrotropin-releasing hormone. But proteolin actually regulates your body peripheral conversion of T4 to T3 instead of reverse T3 that blocks your metabolism. So the best way to confirm it is to do a ratio of free T3 to free reverse T3 with your doctor, which you can be ordered also through the labtestingdirect.com. You can get your ratio done. And free TIA and the TSH, but the most important is the reverse T3 to T3 ratio. And if your reverse T3 is high, your TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone test, is useless. You can also measure core body temperature with a gerotherm or a very accurate electronic thermometer, because if basically your metabolic rate is completely regulated by the amount of T3 not blocked by reverse T3 in the crystallogy of your mitochondria. If your doctor doesn't know this, or your endocrinologist, fire them, because they don't know what they're doing. This is essential in 2014 to understand this, because if your thyroid goes kaflooey, your adrenal glands go, your male and female hormone, your growth hormone. In fact, Dr. Broder Barnes proved that all heart disease is caused by hypothyroidism, which is peripheral conversion of T4 to T3. And if you have an elevated reverse T3, it occurs universally in all diabetics and pre-diabetics or anybody with elevated insulin. So you measure RT3 and it's high, you're a diabetic, pre-diabetic, or you may not even get fat. You might just end up with osteoarthritis or get dementia, because we now have got proofs that dementia is actually diabetes of the brain, if you want to call it. Your brain cells no longer process sugar. They need MCT or medium-chain triglycerides in order to metabolize and create energy. So that's interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So as we're learning more and more of these things, we realize there's a lot of overlap in terms of causes for many illnesses that just kind of show phenotypically a little different in each individual. But the underlying metabolic things are chugging away from the toxic diet of North Americans. Well, we're one segment away from total party time for Ryan, and back with his kids and neighbors and brother-in-law and his brother bringing over their kiddies. Back in a moment. Dissected under phase contrast or India staining. I mean, I've been doing this stuff for, that's a long time, that's 37 years ago. Welcome back, and Ryan, we talked about all kinds of things. One of the things we try to do is we almost want to pull the medical profession and the public back into reality, that their body, every cell in your body is a living supercomputer. It's a miracle, and it's created by the Most High God. And that miracle basically is processing light information, it's processing scalar information, it's processing molecules, literally parallel processing through receptors, gene activation, epigenetics. And a lot of our nutraceuticals work epigenetically, like Neurogen and Nutrifos. Neurogen actually stimulates new nerve cells to grow. It's very protective of the brain. So is CoQ10, CoQ10 Supreme Ubiquinol, and CoQ10 ubiquinone. We know acetyl L-carnitine, which is one of the main components, as well as other components, in Cognition Plus and our brain power, which is vinpocetine, protects the brain. We know that when we raise the level of protective antioxidants like Regenerex, Cell Detox, Glutathione, and Nutritrala, you protect the brain and the microglia, which are your immune cells in the brain. And, people that are skeptical, I said, look, we can do tests to prove what we tell you is true. We can measure organic acids in your urine. We can measure blood levels of metabolites. We can measure imaging studies of your brain with special weighted functional MRI scans, quantitative electroencephalography, all kinds of stuff to prove that what we say is true. So when people are skeptical, it's like, skeptical is good. But how deep is your bank account? Do you really want to do all these fancy tests? It'll cost you a lot of money. Or do you want to get something like a QRMA machine, get started and see how you're clinically improving? And then if you need to target something, we know exactly what test to order that's more conventional and, real hard science. And that's what's neat about it, whether it's bone problems. So we're trying to do a DEXA bone scan, which you shouldn't do more than every 6 months. Or if we do a deoxypyridinium and pyridinoline, which you can do every 3 weeks if you want to check to see if it's improving and the subunits of collagen aren't showing up. So Ryan, it's neat to see the profession gradually, I think the breakdown caused by the Unaffordable Care Act is going to make more and more doctors start to get real with medicine and realize that ultimately they have to serve their customers, i.e. the patients. Ultimately, we need to move to a model where I think, personally, all doctors should pay a salary based on years of experience, training, and public service and new innovations. And it should be a reasonable salary that gives them pensions and time off and sick time just like anybody else gets sick, so they don't burn out and they can study and become expert. And they spend their time with patients when they have to. You don't necessarily get to see a doctor every time, but if you need an hour, you're going to get an hour with a doctor. And I think our current system is stupid. It's like telling an engineer you got to turn bolts and do welding. And I think also a lot of doctors are pretty damned ignorant. Most doctors, they'll tell you your maximum knowledge is when you finish fourth year medical school before you even start your internship or residency. That's not reasonable, because all you're doing is regurgitating what your so-called professors knew, which is often 20 to 30 years out of date. It's also dealing with the political football of who is the most politically able to push their idea or worldview of how medicine's supposed to work on everybody else, which has suppressed certain aspects like Rife-type technology and scalar medicine, and has pushed other ones way too far, which is polypharmacy and toxic medicine that doesn't deal with known causes of nutrient deficiencies, toxic effects, which we call black box warnings. I mean, doctors really know what we call minuscule levels of biochemistry, toxicology, environmental medicine, intermediate metabolism, pathology. So many areas that, to me, I don't see that they can be competent problem solvers without this extra knowledge. So if I had anything to do, it would be more like the Swiss system, where you have to do medical school is 5 years, not 3 or 4. That you have to do 3 years a minimum of general medicine training. Then you have to practice a minimum of 5 years before you can even specialize, and you can't even go to dentistry until you've been an MD. And you can't get into medical school until you have a master's or PhD level and defend a thesis to prove that you have the brains to actually go through school and problem solve. Doctors graduate later. They should be paid a reasonable enough wage that they don't have a giant debt on their neck. But also, I think that being a medical doctor requires an incredible amount of knowledge that I don't think the public realizes, and they don't also realize how ignorant some of their specialists are on metabolism. And you see a doctor saying, I give all my diabetics HMG-CoA reductase inhibitors. That doctor is thoroughly ignorant of the fact that CoA reductase inhibitors will actually block CoQ10 and cause heart failure, peripheral neuropathy, and dementia, because CoQ10 protects the brain from dementia, especially in diabetics. So that's just one example of what I call massive and malignant stupidity. And a lot of people say, well, Dr. Deagle, you shouldn't have a sharp tongue like that when you're criticizing Obama or doctors. No, my tongue is not sharp. It's laser. It cuts. And it has to cut, because if we don't face the music, and that means when I did medicine, I had I had my share of toxically affecting patients, but I mutated away because I saw the effect was not what I wanted. So I kept on teaching myself and going to meetings and talking to top colleagues, and eventually came around to developing a series of nutraceuticals and protocols that are second to none. And as it evolves in the next 2 to 5 years, you'll see it getting even better and better, more interactive, more able for the public to be able to plug in. And also it goes through me to find a doctor that they can in their part of the country or world continue the care or integrate with a special clinic, whether it's cancer or something else. We will more and more automate these things so that you will be able to get access, and we will pull the medical profession, as stubborn as it is, into the 21st century, which it isn't. It's back in like 1960. So Ryan, in the last couple of minutes here before we go and party, what are your favorite nutraceuticals for the last few things here before we kind of depart? And then we go into hour 3, which is our kind of like we call preparedness, whatever. We're going to do a geopolitical analysis and then talk about Fukushima and nasty things before we head off for 4th of July. And also I'm going to be on hour 2 tonight on the Rents Network, kind of summarizing, trying to give people a little positive thing, because I believe that ultimately our God gave us America. Our God gave us solutions for health. We just need to have a guts enough to stand up and say, no, hell no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to take that toxic pill. We're going to take responsibility for our health. We're going to take responsibility for our country, and we're going to start taking our professions back so that we make it the shining light, like John F. Kennedy said, the shining light upon a hill, that instead of being a kind of a destitute nation that's gutless, it's an inspired nation that's powerful and cares for each other and shows other nations how to run a healthcare system, not being at the bottom of the list, which is where we are right now.
Yeah. Well, I think if I could on the thinking about things that powerful and exciting formulations that are out there, I think that things like Allergon and Allerblock are two of my favorites. There's when we deal with the Allergon issue, the enzyme diamine oxidase, it's such a critical, unique ingredient that a lot of people need. Where it's not about seasonal allergies. This is about that you react to a lot that's going on in not only the environment, but the foods that you consume and other things that seem to just make your life sort of miserable in a lot of different ways. And if this enzyme that's supposed to be in our bodies at a significant level, diamine oxidase, is not high enough, we end up reactionary to so many substances and just so many different environments. And so that Allergon has really changed a lot of people's lives for the way that it functions, for food-based issues, but on to much more significant issues with regards to kind of systemic challenges that excessive histamine will create in the body. So I think that's a big one.
Yeah, it really makes a big difference, and we use it for a number of conditions, not just gut allergy, food allergy. Inhale, we use it for autoimmune diseases. We use it for people that are trying to detoxify from heavy metals and chemicals, because a lot of time when you start to pull these heavy metals and chemicals out, you release cytokines in response. And a lot of time, chemicals also attach to body proteins and act as an adjuvant, we call it, that makes the body more allergenic to attack itself. So you've got to whip these chemicals out of the body, and you've got to turn off the cytokines, or you can actually get it, we call a conditioned response, where the person starts to develop autoimmunity, like lupus or some other autoimmune condition. So, that's the genesis of all these autoimmune conditions is toxins in the body, acidity, and instead of alkalosis, and the presence of stealth pathogens and abnormal immune system function caused by these genetic and environmental changes inside the tissues and organs. And when you start looking at this as an ecosystem, you start to get a better idea, which is why when my training, before I went in medicine as an oceanographer, bacteriologist, explains to me why the body is like an ecosystem, just like the oceans. On that note, I want to wish everybody a fancy and amazing and uplifting and fun 4th of July safe one. If you're going to travel safely. Happy 4th. Don't drink and drive. I think the best thing to do is stay near your pool and your home and have fun with your family and do safe barbecuing. And as the George Cruz diet, which is cut the carbos, and you can have what we call super carbs, but Brussels sprouts, broccoli, artichoke, all those things are great. Cut the sugar, and have a happy weekend. We'll be back in hour 3 in a minute with Tim Alexander, Chris Harris, and of course I'm a network as a guest. We'll be back in just a moment.